Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
The rain that night didn't fall. It attacked. It came sideways, like someone up there had a grudge and a power washer. I was 36 then, running a busted 2-truck tow outfit out of Red Hook. Name's Nick Rourke. These days, I've got more gray in my beard than I ever planned, and that night still lives rent-free in my head. The shop smelled like rubber, oil, and burnt coffee. Bay water was already pushing up through the storm drains, turning my yard into a soup of gravel and muck. The sump pump was coughing like it had asthma. Inside, my ledger looked like a eulogy. If the bank didn't blink, I'd be dead by Tuesday. I had a pink slip from the landlord, something about a code fine I knew we'd fixed. A final notice from the bank stamped like blood, and a voicemail from the city saying my rotation slot might get yanked. That was 8:15. I was chewing the inside of my cheek, watching rain sheet down the roll-up door, thinking maybe tonight was the night I left the keys on the desk and walked. Then the office door banged open. Kid stood there, small, soaked, maybe 8 years old, mud to his shins, backpack slumped like it had been dragged through a sewer. He looked right past me like he was still outside, eyes wide, chest hitching like he was trying to hold back a flood worse than the one outside. I'm a dad. I know the look a kid makes when the crying's not far off. I grabbed the cleanest shop towel I had, got him into my chair, and cranked the space heater. He didn't flinch, just sat, shivering like a loose wire. "What's your name, bud?" "Landon." His voice was so small it sounded like it came from behind him, not his mouth. "Where's your folks?" He looked at the floor. "Mom's friend picked me up from soccer." Then there was a bump, then water, then I ran. His right knee was turned out weird, and he kept it stiff like it hurt bad. I ran to the truck, grabbed the ace bandage from the glove box, and wrapped it decent enough to hold. Gave him my ham sandwich, even though I hadn't eaten since noon, and my stomach was screaming. He ate like someone who didn't trust the food to stay. "Before we start, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today." "Thanks. And now the story." I called 911, then 311, because in this city, that's the real line for this kind of mess. Dispatcher logged it. Minor, non-life-threatening, keep the kid warm, don't let him leave. Said they'd send EMS if they could get through. I texted Tony, my driver, told him to grab the Prius on Van Brunt Solo. Rain was smacking the roll-up like fists now. The kid flinched every time thunder hit. "You want to call your mom?" I asked. He shook his head. "She'll be mad I ran." "She won't be mad you're safe." He didn't say anything, just nodded once like maybe he half believed me. I gave him my hoodie. It hung off him like a parachute. Pulled up an old cartoon on my phone, something dumb with animals yelling, and left it on the desk where he could see. We sat like that, heater ticking, cartoon babbling, rain going nuts outside. Every minute felt like 10. I checked the lot, still no sirens, no lights, just the hum of the pump trying to keep the office above swamp level. The kid leaned against the chair's arm like he was trying not to pass out. I sat across from him, arms crossed, jaw tight. Not thinking about the bank, not thinking about the code fine. Just watching a scared little kid shake rainwater onto my office floor and hoping like hell the world hadn't totally stopped caring. The flashing red and white bounced across the puddles like bad lighting at a sad nightclub. A cruiser and a bus slid into the yard around 8:50, tires hissing, water rolling off the bumpers like they'd just come up for air. I stepped out and waved them in, and the EMT was already grabbing a kit before the doors finished swinging open. They moved fast, but gentle. The woman checked Landon's knee and gave me a nod. Mild sprain, nothing broken. She asked what happened, and I told her the story as clean as I could, starting with the door slamming open and ending with the cartoon playing on my phone. I added that he looked like a deer frozen in a Walmart parking lot under floodlights. That part wasn't medical, but it was the truth. The cop was younger than me, but already balding. Looked like he hadn't slept in days. He stepped in, knelt down next to Landon, and asked if he knew his mom's name. Landon blinked a few times, lips moving before sound came out. "Keegan," he whispered, then shut down like someone flipped a switch. He didn't say another word, just stared at the heater like it might tell him what to do next. They loaded him onto the bench seat in the back of the bus, buckled him in like he weighed nothing. EMT gave him a foil blanket and said they'd get him checked for exposure, just to be sure. The officer turned to me next. "Your name, sir?" "Nick Rourke, Harbor Hook Tow. 2 trucks, 1 headache." He smirked like he got it. I gave him my license and shop information. EMT wrote it all down. They asked if I wanted to follow them to the hospital, but I said no. I'd done my part. My part was over. They pulled out slow. The cruiser led, the bus followed, lights reflecting off the yard water like some busted parade. I watched until the glow disappeared down Van Dyke, then stepped back into the shop, suddenly colder than it had been before. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. No caller ID. I almost didn't answer. Figured it was the landlord again. Or maybe the bank leaning on me after hours. But something told me to swipe. The voice on the other end was controlled, tight, but shaking underneath like it had just run 3 blocks and wasn't sure it had made it. "Is this Mr. Rourke?" "Yeah." "This is Carol Keegan." "I'm Landon's mom." I sat down hard. "He's okay." Banged his knee. "Mild sprain," they said. EMS just took him. Said they'd warm him up and check vitals. There was a long inhale, like she'd been underwater since sunset. He said he ran. That they clipped a bumper around 65th. The guy driving panicked. Floodwater started climbing and he ran. He ran straight into my shop. I paused. Smart kid. Scared, but smart. "Thank you," she said. Then again, softer. "Thank you." She didn't ask about anything else. No questions, no accusations, no small talk. Just that. When the line went dead, I was still holding the phone like it might ring again. I turned back to the desk. The ledger was open to a page that looked like a countdown. Past due insurance. 1,184. Landlord wanted 2,600 plus a phantom inspection fee I'd never agreed to. The bank was circling like a vulture with a calculator. Tony's voice crackled through the shop radio a few minutes later. "Box trucks blocking Van Brunt. Looks like a floating fridge with wheels." "You want me to wait it out?" I pressed the mic. "Turn around." "Live to tow another day." "Copy that." The line cut. I leaned back and listened to the sump pump burp and wheeze under the floorboards. Rain still hammered the metal door like it was pissed off. I wasn't thinking about money then. Wasn't even thinking about trucks or flooded roads. I was thinking about Amelia. 3 years gone. And I still reach for her sometimes in the dark. Our little girl, Eva, was 7 now, sleeping in Queens at my sister's place, while I tried to keep Harbor Hook from sinking like a rusted barge. I hated the distance, but I hated the idea of her hearing me curse a busted generator or cry over a late bill even more. That night I could have run 2 or 3 more calls if I pushed hard. Made a couple hundred if I didn't stop to eat. But instead I just sat. Sandwich long gone. Hoodie on a kid I didn't know an hour ago. Heater ticking like it was counting seconds I couldn't get back. Maybe it sounds small. Maybe it was. But sitting in that chair, soaked and broke and 2 payments from shutdown, I felt like I'd finally done one thing right. Just one. And that was more than I'd felt in a long time. Sunday started like a hangover without the drinks. The rain had finally backed off, but the humidity hung in the air like it hadn't made up its mind. I'd barely slept. The cot had a spring with a personal vendetta, and the shop still smelled like wet carpet and diesel. The weird part was the silence. No calls, no pings, no junk texts about extended car warranties, just 6 hours of digital nothing. Then at exactly 9:03, my phone blew up like someone flipped a switch. 32 notifications in under a minute. Nextdoor, Instagram, Facebook, a couple things I didn't even have installed, but apparently auto-tagged me anyway. My name was in a thread titled, "Tow Guy in Red Hook Took in a Kid During the Flood." There were 2 grainy photos of Landon wearing my orange hoodie, sitting by the heater in my office, looking like something out of a Red Cross ad. The post had blown up, people arguing in the comments about what kind of sandwich I gave him, others saying I deserved a medal, or a GoFundMe, or a city contract. It didn't feel real, seeing my stained floor and busted heater on screen with strangers calling me a hero like I'd done something special. That's when I saw the DM Janelle Ortiz. I knew the name vaguely. Autovlogger, Brooklyn-based, did walkarounds of weird mods and salvage flips. She messaged, "You the Red Hook guy? Mind if I get a quote?" I replied, "Not a quote guy." She shot back fast. "Then tell me what happened anyway. No pressure, just your side." I stared at the blinking cursor, then typed, "A kid needed help. That's it." She responded with a heart and said she'd tag me when the video dropped. I figured it'd get 50 views and a comment about my crooked sign. Maybe a joke about child endangerment from someone who thinks sarcasm is a skill. By lunch, her clip had 79,000 views across 4 platforms I don't understand. The thumbnail was my office door cracked open, rain streaking down the frame like a scene from a disaster doc. She'd spliced in a short narration and ended it with, "Sometimes the right guy is the one with grease under his nails." My voicemail had 19 messages. Half were people telling me to raise my rates. The other half were folks asking if I did emergency tows in Long Island. I didn't know whether to laugh or hurl my phone in the bay. At 2:30, I got a call from a number with a Manhattan area code. Woman's voice, clipped and glassy. "Mr. Rourke, I'm calling on behalf of Keegan Auto Group. Mr. Martin Keegan would like to meet you tomorrow. Late morning if you're available. Midtown office." "Keegan," I repeated, leaning on the edge of the desk like the floor had shifted. "He's Carol's father. Landon's grandfather. He saw the video. Appreciates what you did." I exhaled through my nose, stared at the pink slip still stuck to the corkboard behind my head. "Appreciation doesn't cover code fines." She gave a little chuckle like she was used to men saying dumb things, then didn't say anything else. Just left the time and address and hung up. The sun tried to show up that evening, but the clouds hadn't decided if they were done. I mopped the yard again because the drain lines had backtalked all night and burped sludge onto the gravel. As I pulled the mop bucket back into the shop, I spotted something wedged under the door. Another envelope. Soggy, city seal on the corner. Inside, failure to abate. Reinspection fee, $375. Payment due upon receipt. I laughed. Not because it was funny, just because it was that, or put my fist through the drywall, and I couldn't afford repairs right now. I tossed the envelope onto the desk like it might just vanish. My stomach growled, but the only thing in the fridge was a can of flat root beer and a packet of string cheese 2 weeks past its prime. I sat back in the chair, clicked open FaceTime, and waited for my daughter's face to pop up. Eva answered with bedhead and sleepy eyes. "Hi, Daddy. I'm bringing pancakes next time." Real ones, not the frozen kind. "You always say that." "Yeah, but this time I might actually have syrup." We talked for 10 minutes. She told me she drew a turtle in school. Said it looked like Tony. I said I'd tell him that, and she laughed so hard I thought the camera might crack. When we hung up, it felt like someone had put my chest back together with duct tape, good enough to hold, but one wrong move, and it'd all fall apart again. Later that night, Janelle called, this time with actual voice, not just messages. "You ever done community stuff?" she asked. "Clinics, charity things, that kind of thing?" "I'm not corporate," I said. "I don't do confetti and speeches." "You don't need balloons." "You've got a story. That's more than half the people I meet." "I just helped a kid who walked in my door." "Exactly. That's what makes it work." I didn't have an answer for that, so I let the silence stretch. She broke it. "Think about it. Doesn't have to be big. One Saturday. Tire checks, wiper replacements. You'd be surprised how many people never check their air pressure. I said I'd think about it. That was my version of maybe. After the call, I walked the yard one more time, checked the lock on the garage door, and stood for a long minute staring at the Harbor Hook sign. It was rusted at the corners and tilted slightly because the bolts had sunk into the wood wrong. But for once, I didn't feel like it was sinking with me. The storm had left more behind than water and fines. People were watching. By Monday, the rain backed off, but the sky still looked like an old bruise. Around 4 in the afternoon, the grid coughed and gave up. Half the block lost power in one long blink, like someone tripped over a cord too big to find again. The garage lights flickered twice, then died. All I could hear was the sump pump wheezing and the clock inside my head reminding me what the bank wanted by Wednesday. I sat in the office with a legal pad and 2 choices. Option 1, stay in and write a grovel letter to the bank, maybe beg for another grace period. Option 2, fire up the flatbed and take calls from folks who couldn't pay if their lives depended on it. I picked the option that would make my accountant cry. First run was a black Corolla stuck in 3 inches of floodwater near Halleck. Turned out to be an ICU nurse trying to get home after a double shift. The street looked like a lake, and her tires were hugging the curb like a kid clinging to the edge of a pool. I hooked her out easy, no charge. She cried, said she'd been on her feet since 6 a.m., then handed me a protein bar like it was treasure. I told her to get inside and lock the doors. 15 minutes later, I used the flatbed to block traffic on Van Brunt so a school bus could back out without turning into a headline. Kids inside were screaming like it was a ride at Coney Island. The driver gave me a thumbs up so hard I thought his wrist might snap. Some guy filmed the whole thing and shouted, "This city needs more of you," which made me look twice for a setup. I don't trust people with cameras and big compliments. Around 6, my phone buzzed again. No number saved, just a short message from the super at the senior building on coffee. Need power. Urgent. I called back and got him breathing heavy and halfway panicked. "We've got 3 diabetics," he said. "Insulin's in the fridge in the community room. It's already warm in here. I had a generator. It was beat up and smelled like paint thinner, but it had juice. Pulled it from the back of the yard where it had been sleeping under a tarp for 3 years, fueled it with the last of the gas we'd been saving for the flatbeds, and hauled it over in the pickup. When I got there, the super had 6 extension cords ready to go like it was a relay race. I told him no cowboy crap. We ran 1 line to the fridge and 1 to a power strip for basic lights. That was it. No heroics. No plugging in foot massagers or TV trays. The man watched every plug like a hawk guarding a nest. I respected that. From across the street, a guy named Roland filmed from his stoop. Said, "Don't worry, man, this isn't about clout," which of course meant it absolutely was. I didn't fight it. If it kept people's meds cold and didn't blow a breaker, he could film it from a drone with fireworks for all I cared. I missed 3 paying calls that night. One was a box truck stuck on Columbia. Another was a fender bender outside IKEA. The third was a roadside battery call-out in Gravesend I'd been chasing for 2 weeks. I also missed a meeting with some joker calling himself a relief lender, who was 20 minutes late and probably still sipping coffee somewhere uptown. I didn't miss the sound of the bank clock ticking down inside my head like a bomb with a smug face. Around 8:30, I called the branch manager myself, told her the truth. Told her I'd worked through the storm, helped an EMS handoff, kept a generator running at a senior building, and missed 3 profitable calls. Said I needed 48 hours. That was it. She went quiet on the line, then said, "I'll mark it for emergency review. No guarantees. You've got until end of day Wednesday, July 14th. "Understood," I said, then hung up before she changed her mind. When I got back to the yard, it was dark enough to hide the rust. The Harbor Hook sign swayed in the breeze like it wanted to fall, but not yet. I parked the truck and walked toward the office. Something crunched under my boot near the door. Business card. White, clean, sharp corners. Trent Vega. Bayline Tow. On the back, written in blue ink, "We'll take it from here." I stood there for a long second, staring at the thing like it might burst into flames. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. I already saw red. Bayline had been circling my area for years. Kept to Long Island mostly, but I'd heard whispers they wanted to muscle into Brooklyn. Never expected them to show up in the middle of a flood like wolves, sniffing around a limping deer. I stepped into the office, kicked the card inside, and locked the door behind me. Called Tony and told him to shut it down for the night. Go home, eat, sleep. We'll pick it up tomorrow. You sure? He asked. I'm not, I said. But I'm tired, and if I look at one more invoice, I might throw up. He chuckled, said he'd swing by early, then hung up. I sat at the desk and started scribbling numbers. Rent, gas, payroll, the new reinspection fine. Everything stared back like a math problem written in spite. There was no combination that worked without cutting something essential. Or someone. I folded the legal pad closed, got up, pulled the cot out from under the shelf, laid down with my boots still on, and chained the door from the inside, just to be sure. The hum of the generator from 2 blocks over floated through the silence like a lullaby written in diesel and duct tape. I didn't dream. I didn't toss. I just laid there, eyes open, heart tight, trying to believe I was still in control of my own damn story. Tuesday morning, I put on my one decent shirt, the blue one with the collar that still held its shape, and rode the F train into Manhattan with dried rain on my boots and a stomach full of nothing but instant coffee. I hadn't shaved. Didn't trust myself with a razor when my hands were still shaking from what the last few days had cost. Keegan's lobby smelled like money and lemons. Polished stone, soft chairs, big glass panels that looked out over Midtown like the city owed them a view. The receptionist looked up, smiled in that practiced way, and said, "Mr. Rourke, they're expecting you." That threw me. No one expected me anywhere but collections. Martin Keegan came out a minute later, hand extended, suit clean enough to sell. The kind of handshake that said he'd close deals in rooms with $10 pens and lawyers who charge by the breath. He looked me over once, head to boots, and nodded. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Let's get to it." He didn't waste time. We sat in a small glass-walled office off the main floor. He offered me water. I said no, and he launched straight in. "I want to buy your outfit. Fair multiple, clean deal. Fold you into our roadside program. New trucks, wrapped in Keegan blue, full salary, benefits, and strong bonus potential for growth." I stared at him across the table, hands flat on my knees. "I'm not a rap." He didn't flinch. Just leaned back like this was the part he liked best, seeing how people said no. "That's negotiable," he said. "Branding's flexible. Operational control stays with you. Within scope. Scope's always the part that bites," I said. He gave the smallest smile and nodded like I'd passed some invisible test. Halfway through the next line of his pitch, the door opened. Carol walked in, hair still damp from the weather, blazer half-buttoned, eyes locked on me like she was still building a case. She was younger than I expected. 33, I'd find out later, but didn't move like someone who let things happen to her. She walked like she was already late to fixing something. "Hi," she said, tone measured. "I'm Carol." Landon's mom, I figured. She looked me over, not rudely, just directly. He slept through the night. First time in 2 weeks. I'm glad. He's a tough kid. She sat across from me, arms crossed. "Do you have kids?" I nodded. "One, Eva, 7. She's in Queens with my sister most nights. I'm trying to get things stable enough to bring her back full time." Carol's mouth did this thing, tightened at first, then softened just enough to not be a smile. Martin stood, checked his watch, and said he had another call. "You two talk," he said. "We'll circle back." We took coffee in a side cafe attached to the lobby, mostly empty. Quiet music overhead, smell of toasted bagels and overpriced espresso. She stirred her coffee without sipping it. If money weren't a thing, what would you actually do with your shop? I thought about lying, then didn't. I'd hire a third driver, fix the damn roof, get the office heater working without smacking it with a wrench, and I'd start a pot, not a loan, a fund, call it Pay It Forward Repairs. So folks don't have to choose between fixing brakes or buying groceries. Carol looked up from her cup. You thought about that before all this? Yeah, for years. I've seen too many single moms drive with bald tires and tell me they'll figure it out next paycheck. You don't figure out a blown tire at 60 on the BQE. She sat back, taking me in with a longer look this time. Something in her face shifted, less guarded, more curious. My phone buzzed on the table. Text from Janelle. 1.1 million views. You're internet famous now. There was a link to a new video splice. Roland's generator clip had made the cut. I left it unopened. Carol glanced at the screen. That her? Janelle. Autovlogger. She's the reason half my voicemail's full of strangers asking for towels in Connecticut. Is that a problem? I shrugged. Better than silence. At least people are calling. A woman from Keegan's PR team came over 10 minutes later, tablet in hand and pitch already loaded. She smiled too wide and leaned forward like she was explaining how to tie shoes. We'd like to propose a safety clinic at one of our Queens lots, she said. Wiper checks, tire pressure, car seat safety installs. You'd be the face of it. Real working class image, community driven. I held up a hand. 2 conditions. First, no balloons, no speeches, no giant checks. Second, pricing stays honest. No bait and switch. Nobody walks in thinking it's free and walks out with a $1,200 repair quote Carol cut in before PR could fake a laugh. Deal, she said. Her voice was sharp, final. I could tell she meant it. The woman blinked, nodded, and said they'd draft something for review. I didn't care about the paperwork right then. I cared that Carol said it like someone who'd slap a clipboard out of your hand if you broke your word. They offered a modest stipend for the clinic, staff, fuel, setup costs. Just enough to keep my shop afloat for another week without touching my posted rates. It wasn't charity. It was a lifeline that didn't come with chains. We finished our coffee. Carol stood first. I'll be there, she said. At the clinic. Not just showing up to shake hands. I'll work sign-ins. Wear whatever polo the PR team wants. Good, I said. I'll be the guy in a Harbor Hook hoodie with oil on his jeans. She almost smiled again. Almost. Then she was gone, blazer disappearing into the elevator before I could figure out what that expression meant. Wednesday morning hit like a slap. I'd barely rolled off the cot when my phone lit up with 3 missed calls, 2 texts, and 1 link I almost didn't open. Anonymous blog post. No byline, no proof. Just a headline that screamed louder than it deserved. Tow operator price gouged flood victims, exclusive invoice inside. The attached image was a grainy scan of a bill that looked like someone printed it through a dirty windshield. It had my name misspelled, my shop number wrong, and a made-up address on something called Vern Brunt Street. I read it 3 times just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. The voicemail clip was worse. Somebody had pitched down a voice to sound like mine if I was drunk and underwater. Yeah, that's double for emergencies, it rasped. I almost laughed. Almost. By 9, a guy from the city showed up at my yard wearing a windbreaker and a badge clipped to his belt. Serious face. Clipboard. Didn't bother with small talk. Mr. Rourke, we've received a complaint about possible price gouging during the flood. We're here to confirm rates, logs, and invoices from the last 72 hours. I didn't blink. I walked straight to the file cabinet, pulled the folder labeled Flood Week, grabbed my laminated rate sheet off the corkboard, and hauled out a shoebox full of handwritten mileage logs going back 6 years. Take your time, I said. I've got nothing to hide. He took the box like it was evidence. I told him I had dash cam footage too, if he wanted timestamps and video. Back inside, I pulled the SD card from the flatbed cam, dumped it onto my laptop, and queued up Monday's footage. Clip after clip showed me pulling cars, waving off cash, helping a lady with a walker into her front steps, even giving a guy a jump with no charge after he told me his card reader was down. That's me, I said. Time, location, plate. All right there. He didn't say much, just nodded while checking timestamps. He paused on one where I literally said, Don't worry about it, ma'am. Just get home safe. 2 hours after the blog dropped, my phone rang again. It was the ICU nurse, Melissa. I just saw that crap online, she snapped. If they come after you, I'm bringing the whole unit. You didn't even take cash. You towed me for free and gave me your last damn granola bar. It was a protein bar, I said. Doesn't matter. It was yours. She wasn't the only one. 2 other customers from that night called within the hour. One was the school bus driver, the other a teacher I'd pulled from a dead battery near IKEA. All of them were pissed on my behalf. Janelle didn't wait. By noon, she'd already dropped a response video, broke the blog post apart like it owed her rent money, froze the invoice image on screen, zoomed in and circled the fake street name in big red. Vern Brunt, she said, tone sharp. It's Van Brunt. Anyone who actually tows in Red Hook would know that. Then came the real kill shot. Another auto creator did a frame-by-frame breakdown of the invoice and spotted a faint logo in the bottom right, Bayline Tow, their watermark. Probably forgot to strip it out before pasting my info on top. Bayline denied everything. Of course they did. Posted some smug press line about being committed to community standards and disturbed by recent discourse, like the sun was denying it was hot. Didn't matter. By 2, Keegan's legal team had fired off a cease and desist that I heard was 3 pages of steel. A lawyer friend called it elegant brutality. I didn't see it, but someone said the closing line read, "We are not impressed by amateurs in disguise." The city investigator came back at 4. He handed me my rate sheet and the box of logs. "We're closing the inquiry," he said. "You're good." He hesitated like he wanted to say sorry, but wasn't allowed. Instead, he stuck out a hand. I shook it. That was enough. I didn't get to breathe long. The Queen's Clinic was already set. Janelle had promoted it, Keegan PR had confirmed the time, and Carol had told me, run it no matter what. So I did. By 5:15, I was setting cones in the Keegan lot off Northern Boulevard. No banners, no DJs, no speeches. Just me, a crate of tire gauges, a stack of car seat instructions, and a gallon of coffee that tasted like despair and kept me vertical. Carol worked the sign-in table like she'd been doing it her whole life. She wore jeans and a zip-up with the Keegan logo stitched so small it could have been a typo. She didn't talk much, just nodded, smiled politely, and kept the line moving. Landon stood beside her, handing out reflective slap bands from a cardboard box like it was Halloween. He spotted me and waved. "Mr. Nick!" "Hey, kid," I said. "You're hired." He grinned and handed a band to a woman with 2 kids and a leaky minivan. I installed 3 car seats with a tech from Safe Kids. My hands were scraped and blackened before the second one, but I didn't stop. Checked 20-something tires. Replaced a pair of windshield wipers out of my own stock. Grease got all over the shirt I'd tried to keep clean for once. Didn't matter. I kept going. People came. Not because of a video. Not because of Keegan's name on the permit. They came because they'd heard something was happening in a parking lot in Queens where folks could show up and not be judged for driving something older than their job title. Around hour 3, I looked up from under a Chrysler and saw Martin. He was 10 feet back, arms crossed, coat open, watching. His face was stone, but his eyes weren't. He didn't wave, didn't speak. Just stood there like someone evaluating whether a storm was going to pass or settle in for the season. I got up, wiped my hands on a rag that should have been burned a week ago, and went back to the checklist on the next car. By the time we packed up, the lot was covered in coffee cups, plastic cones, and tire tread chalk lines. My back was screaming. My knees felt like sandpaper. But I didn't feel used up. I felt solid. Friday. I walked back into Keegan Auto Group wearing the same shirt from the clinic. Grease faded out with a little help from Carol's stain stick and a half hour of elbow grease. The receptionist gave a nod, buzzed me in without asking, and led me past the glass lobby into a side hallway lined with artwork that looked like someone paid a lot of money to say nothing. Martin was waiting in a smaller conference room with a terrible framed print of a boat that had no water under it. 2 thick stacks of paper sat on the table, one marked terms, the other proposal draft. Legal pads, pens that probably cost more than my truck's radiator, and a pitcher of lemon water that no one touched. We can revisit the wrap, he said first before I even sat. Keep Harbor Hook as is. Add preferred partner of Keegan Auto Group underneath it. No color change unless you choose it? I didn't respond right away. Just opened the folder in front of me and started flipping through. Pages full of lawyer words that all sounded like they could either protect me or bury me, depending on who was reading them. I've got terms, I said, setting the folder down. Straight up. No games. Martin nodded once. Let's hear them. No forced price hikes. Not ever. No bait rates. What we post is what we charge, full stop. And I want that posted, big, on every truck and every site we show up at. He raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. I kept going. Union level pay for every driver I hire, not a penny less. That includes benefits, overtime, and protections. No loopholes. You planning on unionizing? Planning on feeding the people who keep the wheels turning. Call it what you want. He jotted something on a pad, kept listening. And the Pay It Forward Repairs Fund? That's non-negotiable. Third-party nonprofit, community oversight board, full transparency. Not 1 cent gets used for marketing. Not $1 turns into a photo op. Martin looked at me like I'd brought a crowbar to a chess match, then gave me this sideways grin. Just the corner of his mouth, like I'd made his day more interesting. You're stubborn, Mr. Rourke. I bury cars at 3 a.m, I said. It comes with the job. We kept going. 17 lots across New York State. Preferred tow partner with emergency calls billed at my posted rates. Not what their finance department thinks they can shave off. Quarterly audits. Not for my books, but for theirs too. If they tried to get slick with the charity or shortchange the work, I had the right to walk, no penalties. Carol's name was in the background of the clause. I saw it, didn't ask. She was part of this whether she said it or not. Halfway through, the door opened. Carol walked in holding a brown paper deli bag and 2 bottles of iced tea. She dropped one in front of me without asking what I drank, pulled out a sandwich and set it down like a judge handing down a sentence. Eat, she said. I opened the wrapper. Turkey on rye. Not my favorite, but I didn't argue. She sat down on the arm of one of the chairs and scrolled through her phone while I chewed like I hadn't seen real food in a week. You always bring sandwiches to contracts? I asked with my mouth half full. Only when someone forgets to. She didn't look up, but I caught the smirk that tried to hide behind her focus. We finished hammering the details over 2 lukewarm teas and a pile of crossed-out clauses. By the time the pen hit the page, it was late afternoon, and I'd already burned through every what-if in my head. The pen was heavier than I expected. Real ink. Sleek metal. Probably worth more than the cot I'd slept on the last 12 nights. I signed. Then I stuck out my hand. Martin didn't hesitate. He stood, gripped it firm, and said, "Welcome to the network. We'll see if you still say that after tax season." He actually laughed. Carol didn't say anything until he left the room. She stayed seated, thumbs still tapping something out on her phone, and then looked up. "You sure about this?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm sure about the parts I put in writing." She nodded, then stood. "We've got the next clinic lined up for Staten Island. 2 Saturdays from now. Send the details. I'll bring the torquey wrenches and the attitude, 'You've got enough of both.'" I left the building lighter than I walked in, even with that contract folder under my arm. The subway ride back to Red Hook felt shorter. The air didn't smell better, but it didn't choke me like it had the week before. When I stepped into the shop, Tony was under the flatbed adjusting the axle tie. He rolled out, grease on his forehead, and looked up like he was expecting bad news. "We're hiring," I said. He blinked twice. "Wait, like actually hiring? Like payroll hiring?" "Yeah. Start writing down who you trust behind a wheel." He stood up, smiled, then did something I wasn't expecting. He hugged me. It was fast, awkward, slightly sweaty, but it landed. I patted his back once like I didn't know what to do with my hands and said, all right, calm down. I'm not dead." He stepped back, eyes a little glassy. "It's about time, man." I didn't argue. I called Eva next. She answered in one ring. "Hey, Daddy." "Guess what?" I said. "Tomorrow's pancake day." Real pancakes. Syrup and all, you promise? I signed a paper today that pretty much guarantees it. She laughed, and I swear I could hear the smile before I saw it. That sound, the laugh of your kid when they actually believe you, hits different when you've been running on fumes and fear. That night I drove home, not to the shop, not to the cot, to my place, my bed. 12 days gone, and I finally got to sleep without thinking about late fees and pink slips. The sheets smelled like detergent and dust. The silence didn't feel like punishment anymore. It felt earned. The next 3 months moved like a shop jack, slow to lift, heavy when dropped. Days started before sunrise and ended when the last brake pad was bolted on or the last email from Keegan's Legal was answered. We added a third truck. Not new, but solid. Flatbed with a whisper of transmission whine and a rust patch shaped like Florida on the hood. I handed the keys to Luz, the only person who'd interviewed with steel-toe boots, a multi-tool clipped to her belt, and the confidence to say, I can back this into a shoebox with room to dance. She wasn't kidding. First week in, she parallel parked the rig between 2 sanitation trucks in Astoria and didn't blink. Janelle ran a fundraiser stream that pulled in $6,400 for the Pay It Forward Repairs Fund. First month, we covered brakes for a delivery dad whose shoes were worn thin from biking between gigs, and a starter install for a home health aide whose van died on her way to an overnight. Both tried to pay it back. I told them not to. Next time someone asks, just point them to the sign, I said. That's all I want. We rotated Saturday clinics through Astoria, Jamaica, and Staten Island. No banners, no microphones, no gimmicks. Just torque wrenches, hand pumps, and a battered thermos full of terrible coffee sitting on a milk crate. Word got around. Some weekends we saw 20 cars. Some weekends we saw 60. We didn't track turnout. We tracked what got fixed. Carol showed up to every single one. She didn't wear a name tag. Didn't pull rank. Just showed up in jeans and a ponytail, clipboard in hand, sunburned neck, sleeves rolled. I caught her wiping sweat off her brow with a rag that used to be my old Harbor Hook tee. She didn't complain. She never once said, my dad runs this. I respected the hell out of that. After clinics, we'd grab coffee. Sometimes with Landon, sometimes just the two of us. The conversations were always light. Mets pitching rotations, traffic on the BQE, why gas jumps 20 cents overnight with no warning. She never once brought up Amelia, not until I did. We were sitting on the tailgate one evening behind the Jamaica lot, paper cups in hand, sun dipping behind the J train tracks. I mentioned how Eva didn't remember the smell of her mom's perfume anymore, just said, Mom smelled like pancakes. Carol didn't fill the silence with a sorry, didn't pat my arm or tilt her head like I was a broken thing. She just said, that's not a bad memory to hold on to. That was all, and it was enough. At one clinic in Staten Island, a woman showed up with a car seat still in the box, and a look that said she was too proud to ask, but too tired not to. I opened the latch instructions and cussed under my breath while Carol read the manual out loud beside me like we were defusing a bomb. Landon filmed the whole thing, added a soundtrack of royalty-free circus music, and uploaded it to his tablet like it was Oscar-worthy. We didn't say what any of this was, me and Carol. No labels, no hand-holding, just nods, laughs, shared silence. We kept it slow, because we'd both learned what happens when you rush into something before the smoke clears. Martin tried to pull her off 2 clinics, sent some executive assistant with a calendar invite and a client-facing priority. She declined. Twice. Showed up anyway. Stood under the sun with a clipboard and a water bottle and didn't say a word about it. That told me more than any conference room handshake ever could. Janelle kept things honest with little online bits. What fair toe looks like, your rights at the roadside, why air in your tires costs less than a blowout. She called me Red Hook Nick in one of them, which I hated until I realized people remembered it. Not everybody loved the exposure. I got a couple grumbles from old-timers who said I was turning toe work into a social cause. I let them grumble. I'd rather fix someone's brakes before they wrap around a telephone pole than impress a guy who retired before cell phones. The Pay It Forward Fund helped 23 families that season. I printed every receipt, taped them to a corkboard in the office, each one pinned next to a photo or scribbled thank you note. delivery drivers, nurses, grocery clerks, veterans, moms with duct tape strollers in the back seat. I didn't care what car they drove or what story they told. If it was honest, we helped. Some days I'd walk in after a long tow and just stand in front of the board, coffee in hand, boots wet, staring at the math. Not the dollars, the difference. The knock came just after lunch on a Thursday. City clipboard man, mid-50s, windbreaker, face like he'd stared down 20 years of leaky ceilings and passive-aggressive property owners. He didn't introduce himself. Just flipped open the clipboard and said, "Code compliance." That Red Hook notice from March? I'm here to close it out. I walked him through the yard. Still muddy in the corners, but cleaner than it had ever been when I was running solo. He stopped by the oil trap and squinted like he was trying to catch it lying. "This new?" he asked. "April," I said, handing him the invoice from the install. Licensed crew, full certification, signed twice. He didn't smile, just marked a box, then measured the distance between my parking cones and the chain link like I'd hidden a crime in the gravel. He double-checked the slope by the runoff drain, then paused, looked around like something was missing. "Where's the dumpster?" "In the corner. Locked," I said. "Got fined for it being open last year." That got a tiny grunt of approval. He clicked his pen twice, stamped something on the final page, and said, "You're good." That was it. No handshake, no smile. Just the city's version of absolution. But it landed. A week later, I was locking the office around midnight when headlights lit up the gate. Squeal of brakes, loud enough to wake the pigeons. I stepped outside and saw the Bayline logo flash in the dark, right before the back door opened and two shredded tires hit the gravel like dead fish. They peeled off. No tag, no note. Just stink and ego. Tony called the cops. NYPD rolled up in 9 minutes flat. Probably because a cruiser was already parked 2 blocks over watching for parking violators. The officer took one look at the footage from my camera and whistled low. "They dumped tires on everyone?" he asked. "Just the ones they're scared of." He wrote the ticket while grinning like it made his week. I didn't post about it, didn't scream online, just filed the clip with the city's rotation board. If Bayline wanted to play games, they could do it from off the list. We ran our winter clinic 2 Saturdays later in a heated service bay up in Yonkers, partnered with a church and a union hall. The space smelled like rubber, tool grease, and old pine cleaner, but it was dry and warm. The Pay It Forward Fund covered 12 battery swaps before lunch, and Luce and Tony knocked out 3 wiper replacements before I'd finished my first cup of coffee. Martin showed up in jeans and a flannel like he was testing out for local grandpa number 3 in a Hallmark movie. Still shook hands like a CEO, though. He asked me quietly if I needed anything. "Yeah," I said. "Patience." He nodded like that made more sense than it should have. Carol came an hour later with her mom in tow. First time I'd met her. Woman hugged me before she even said hello. "We finally slept on July 11th, she said in my ear. Before that, it was all worry. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. She let go, patted my arm like a confirmation, and went off to find Landon, who'd disappeared behind the snack table with a half box of slap bands and a Sharpie. Janelle's year-end montage hit social the week before Christmas. The clip opened with the flood footage, my hoodie, the space heater, the cartoon on my cracked phone screen. Then the generator at the senior building, the clinics, the receipts board. Landon handing me a slap band to sign while grinning like I was someone who mattered. I watched it once, then I shut it off and went to mop the bay. We rehabbed the office that winter. New paint on the walls, gray-blue with a stripe of yellow like I always meant to do. Tony found a couch from a moving sale that didn't stab you when you sat wrong. Luce brought in a fridge from her cousin's apartment, and for once, it didn't freeze the lettuce into bricks. I hung a pegboard above the desk. Every thank you note went on it. Every old key from a job that meant something. One from the Corolla nurse, one from a guy who left town and mailed back the spare. They all got spots. Right in the middle, I pinned a photo of Amelia and Ava from a beach trip back in 2014. Amelia's hair is blowing sideways, and Eva's grinning with her arms full of wet sand. I didn't put it up to remember what was gone. I put it there to remember what we carried forward. 12 months to the day since Landon limped through my office door, we closed the yard to calls from noon to 3. No tow trucks, no jump starts, no invoices. Just folding tables, foil pans, and paper napkins that felt like sandpaper. We called it Open Yard. Tony showed up early with a giant tub of his famous macaroni, the one that looked like it could patch drywall and might hold up a wall if you asked it nice. Luz brought the speakers, rigged up a playlist that bounced between classic rock and whatever her niece liked this month. I grilled dogs on a propane burner with a dented lid and no temperature gauge. Didn't matter, they came out just right. We set the corkboard with every pay-it-forward receipt by the sign-in table. Every name, every job, every note from someone who'd walked in with a busted car and walked out with a working one. People pointed at their names and laughed, the kind of laugh you let out when a rough season finally rolls over into memory. Janelle walked around with her camera for the first 10 minutes. Got a few clips of Luz dancing with a little girl in cowboy boots and Tony yelling at the grill like the onions had insulted his mother. Then she put the gear down, grabbed a plate, and ate like someone who earned it. I appreciated that more than I said. Martin came up around 1, slacks, no tie, sleeves rolled. He stood on a pallet near the fence, looked out at the crowd like he was trying to memorize every face, and said one thing. Community matters. Then he stepped down and didn't say another word. Smartest move of the day. Carol stood next to me in a blue dress that didn't belong in a tow yard but somehow worked anyway. She held the ribbon, Landon on the other end, scissors in his hand wobbling like he'd chugged too much lemonade. You ready? I asked. He nodded so hard his hair flopped into his eyes. We counted down from 5 together. Someone in the back yelled, 3.5, and a few people laughed. But when we hit 0, Landon cut that ribbon clean. People clapped. Someone cheered. I don't remember who. Eva stood behind the drink table with a red cooler and a big plastic jug of lemonade she'd helped stir. She handed out cups like a pro, told people to take a cookie even if they said they didn't want one. I caught her smiling at Carol once, and Carol smiled back. I introduced them after the ribbon came down. No speech, no lead-up. Just, Carol, this is Eva. Eva, Carol. Like it wasn't a big deal, and maybe that's why it wasn't. The yard smelled like burgers, hot rubber, sweat, and hope. Not the kind you light candles for, the kind you build with your hands. A woman came up to me near the grill, maybe mid-60s, gray curls under a Mets cap. She wrapped me in a hug before I could stop her. I was the nurse in the Corolla, she whispered. Thank you. I still remember how calm your voice was that night. You didn't even ask for anything. You just got it done. I didn't say much, just nodded and hugged her back. Sometimes words aren't the point. Later, when the cones were stacked, the foil trays scraped empty, and the ribbon sat curled in a trash bag like a piece of shed skin, I walked the yard alone. The office lights were off, the sign still read Harbor Hook Tow, and the gate chain clicked once in the breeze like it was tired too. Inside, the bank file was marked current. No red ink, no late flags. The city had kept our rotation slot without a fight after the audit and the clinics. And the pegboard behind the desk was full. Notes, keys, a few pictures, and that one of Amelia and Eva on the beach, right where it belonged. I didn't feel done, but I felt tired in a way I could live with. When money's tight, do you help anyway or protect yourself first? If this hit home, comment, good story, or your take. Like and subscribe. It's huge for us. One click for you.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.